Hello, everyone. Hope you're having an amazing Monday and welcome to the Reality Bang. I'm Ajay Johan, your host for the session, and thank you for tuning in. That's it. If you guys want to contribute our topics, have any questions, or just want to tell us what an amazing job we're doing, you can reach out to us at 6364252164. So, for this edition of the Reality Bang, let's talk about authenticity versus aesthetics. And of course, we have to have Joan here with us. It's great to have you
Of
back.
course, of course, you have to have me for this, huh? Like, we come from, of course, we have to have.
Yeah. I mean, like when
Yeah, it's
both of
good
us
to be
get
back. It's good to
together,
be back.
yeah, when both of us get together, we come up with crazy topics and, good info.
Yeah, but this is a good topic both of us can talk about. So yeah.
Yep. So let's jump right in. It. Now, my very first question is now, when you think about, social media, now what matters more to you personally, like being authentic or, keeping things aesthetically pleasing?
Hmm. So before talking about this topic, I'll just tell I'm not that active on social media as of now. I am.
Okay.
I think it's yeah, so I think it's been at least more than 5 years. I haven't posted anything, neither even a story I've posted. So
Mm-hmm.
I am active on Instagram. Use Instagram regularly. I use it to message people and share posts and watch reels. I consume Instagram as much as it can get, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't post and do stories. That has been a while. I will eventually, maybe in a couple of months or something. I'm planning to start. So before I, even give my opinion, and everything, I just want to tell, I'm not that active when it comes to posting and stuff. But
Okay.
I think, uh, I'll make it like what I would like at least my content to be like, what I would like my social media feed to look like. I think it's for me, I'm somewhat in between. There's nothing. I
Mm-hmm.
think when it comes to the Gen Z generation, I think they like authenticity a lot more. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that blend of authenticity and when you blend that authenticity with great aesthetics, I think that is something I enjoy a lot more. And I think I am someone who would personally prefer to be me on social media. I wouldn't like to create another image of myself on social media and make myself all positive and this is how my life. I don't think I'll be that sort of a fake person, where I'll
Mm-hmm.
make people have a different perception, and but the reality is things are not that great for me. I
Yeah.
won't do that sort of a thing, but
Mm-hmm.
I will be very honest about how things are going on within my life and how it is for me. But then at the same time, I am someone who's very interested to make my feed look creative, which
Mm-hmm.
I can. It's just I don't take the effort for it. But eventually, I think I will put that effort for it. But I think that authenticity should be there even in an aesthetics. Why this
Mm-hmm.
whole debate of authenticity and aesthetics comes is because that when people dive into that whole world of being aesthetic, I
Mm-hmm.
think it somewhat blurs out the difference between what is real and what is not. In the name of aesthetic, I think they end up sacrificing a lot of that authenticity that they have within themselves to create that sort of an aesthetic, to create that sort of an eye-catching, grippy sort of a content. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why, I think that's why because of that, they end up sacrificing a little bit of authenticity that is there within them to gain that sort of an aesthetics, which is, which somewhat benefits them. But then in reality, like a little bit of you is going away, when you're sacrificing that aesthetics. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the whole debate and argument comes in with the fact that, when someone is trying to create an aesthetic content, how authentic really is it? Because the whole thing about aesthetics is it's supposed to enhance your authenticity. That's what it should
Mm-hmm.
do actually. And but in the end of the day, that itself can be so tempting, for that sort of a visual aesthetics, because as humans, we for us, we crave for that sort of visual candy, right? We
Mm-hmm.
crave for that sort of a visual look on phone, especially phone being a thing where it's primarily all visual mediums that we consume. It is something, a great visual is something that we can't just completely distract. It's going to be there.
Yeah.
We can't deny it does create good views. It does create good content in the end of the day. And not content, it creates good like it how to say, like there's good business with the audience also in that sort of a way. And people have
Mm-hmm.
seen that happen in that way. I think people end up sacrificing that authenticity within them to for that aesthetic sort of a thing. And I think that's where the whole debate comes. What about you, bro? What kind of a person you think you are in this?
Well, I'm also as a mix, but I would prefer, to, consume more authentic content because, like, see, like, we have just seen a lot of, influencers, a lot of content creators, who just made, their life on social media so wonderful, sunshine, rainbows, and all. And then deep inside, they are fighting something which we have no clue about. So that
Hmm.
leads a lot of youngsters down the wrong way. Like, a lot of youngsters think, like, hey, let me become a content creator, I'll also get, like, a nice good life, like whatever these guys are having. And but they don't understand, like, the amount of effort that goes into it, the amount of, issues you're supposed to face when you're
Hmm.
making content. Because
Hmm.
even like when you're creating YouTube content, or Instagram content, shorts, reels, anything like that, it
Hmm.
takes a lot of, thinking that goes behind it. Now
Yeah.
you have to select something that's trending, and you have to be
Hmm.
very, up to date with all the trends that are going on.
Yeah.
And then you have to, next step, how are you going to make it in a way that is, both authentic as well as aesthetic, because it has to be
Yeah.
pleasing to the eye, as well
Hmm.
as it has to connect with your viewers.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of thing is going to go to that, and most people, they don't get to that point, like, where both come together and, make beautiful content. They either go like one of two ways, like extremely extremely authentic, or extremely extremely aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the blend should be there, but I
Hmm.
would lean to more authentic
Hmm.
feeling. Yeah.
But personally, when if you yourself are curating content, what would you
Hmm.
prefer to do?
I would like it depends actually. Like, I would want to really do a mix of both, like we're
Hmm.
blending both together and make it like really good. But
Hmm.
then again, we are humans at the end of the day. There's no one human
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
going to be perfect in making that kind of
Yeah.
content. Of
But
course, like when you start, you might go in one of two ways, but as you get good at it, try have a feeling like, yeah, maybe I would want to do something of both in a mix.
hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, moving on to the next question. Now, do you feel like platforms like, Instagram or Facebook, push more, not Facebook, sorry, YouTube, push
Hmm.
push us more towards, aesthetic content over authenticity?
So I would have said couple of years back that would have been true. That would the answer would have been yes
Mhm.
to that question. I think I think the algorithm itself would be pushing aesthetic stuff more, which is why I think now with the new generation of voice of authenticity is on trending thing, right? That is one of the reasons why we even started this topic, because this whole debate of aesthetics authenticity is happening now. And I think
Mhm.
that is one of the thing. Authenticity is something people crave for in this generation, because I
Mhm.
think they have gone through this one whole era of such aesthetic sort of content. And like I said earlier, right, in the name of aesthetics, a lot of
Mhm.
authenticity is sacrificed and is faded away, and it's watered down to a very minute, like very minimal percentage of an authenticity. And for enhancing the aesthetics, it is a lot of things are sacrificed for good visuals. For many years that worked out. I think Gen Z's, okay, I don't want to say Gen Z's, but the newer generation somewhat, who did not like that,
Mhm.
wanted to get out of it and start the whole thing of authenticity, which is the whole
Mhm.
thing of influencers also, right? They connect.
Mhm.
One of the main reasons influencers work very well is because they have that sort of a communication to an audience, that
Yeah.
and they have that sort of a relationship with the audience, and the main tool they use for that relationship is authenticity. And
Mhm.
today, I think in the end of the day, I say, me myself, I'm a designer and I'm a videographer, but I always say, in the end of the day, no matter how grand everything you'll make everything look, content is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And if there is no content in what you're doing, no
Mhm.
matter how grand you make it look, there people won't necessarily like it. There's a reason there are
Mhm.
some movies that are visually very, like it's an absolute eye candy, to visually stunning to watch that. But then there are movies that are not necessarily as visually stunning, but the story in that is so much more, audience is connected to that story so much more, despite how the visuals are. In the end of the
Mhm.
day, because they have connected to that story more, people will go to watch that movie, a lot more than a visually stunning movie. And
Mhm.
that is one of the things, right? Like in horror itself, if you take that footage films, right, which became famous at one point, and
Yeah,
this
yeah.
whole thing of, yeah, this whole thing of footage horror, which is
Mhm.
completely different from the regular sort of film, films that you watch. And
Mhm.
it's different from the regular cinematography, but it is visually, it ends up communicating the story so well. People didn't bother the fact that it was of, shot in a footage way, and people
Mhm.
like that. So I think in the enhancing that is authenticity is the reason aesthetics came in.
Mhm.
And I think this whole, in the end of the day, when the content is good, nobody will care. And today, the content everyone somehow end up craving for is authenticity, more than anything.
Yeah.
Even in films and even uh, in social media and online, people, when something is not necessarily authentic, or something realistic that is connecting to them, they end up having this sort of question that this is not realistic, this is not authentic.
Mhm.
But then I am also someone who personally believes, it is not necessarily, authenticity should not come in your way of story and making up stuffs like that. Why I'm
Mhm.
saying that is because I think in the name of, like, there are so many movies that are not necessarily authentic, right?
Yeah.
Take Star Wars for it. For example, is Star Wars an authentic film? No, it's not. But
Absolutely not.
yeah, but it connects. But there is something about it that
Mhm.
connects to you on a maybe on a human level, or on some sort of way it connects to you. It
Mhm.
can be, it is different for many people, but if it is connecting to you in some way or the other, if you're going back to that sort of a content, I think, the fact that it's not authentic, people end up questioning that. That is one thing I'm seeing in this generation, where when it comes to social media, that authenticity becomes the most important thing for them. And that is
Mhm.
actually become more important than aesthetics currently. People might
Mhm.
think it's aesthetic, but today actually people crave for authenticity so much more. And but I think in the name of authenticity, there are necessarily some stories that don't, necessarily fall in that category of authenticity. But in the
Mhm.
end of the day, I think in the name for content, it is still fun to watch. It is still like
Mhm.
action movies. Also, take for example, all the action movies are not realistic, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if any person flies in the air like that after one kick, that person won't be alive. But you see that person getting up and walking and trying to attack again. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it is not that, it's not necessarily, that's not an authentic content. But
Mhm.
you'll still go rewind and watch that sort of a scene because it's interesting to watch. And I
Mhm.
think aesthetic also somewhat falls in that sort of an angle. But I think if it's not, but the thing is, it connects to you. Like I said, right, it's not
Mhm.
realistic, but still that sort of a thing connected to that person. Aesthetic also, in a way, for me personally, I think it connects to the person in that way. Visually, it is something they're seeing that they're not experiencing in real life.
Mhm.
And that's the sort of a thing that they're able to connect to. But
Mhm.
again, a lot of people, there are people who don't like that, which is why the whole thing of authenticity comes in. And I
Mhm.
am someone who's fine with it. For me, it doesn't bother the fact that, something aesthetics doesn't bother me as much as it bothers a lot of other people. But then again,
Mhm.
it's subjective. There are people who prefer that. So I think why the whole authenticity is working out very well is, I think in today's generation, authenticity is like become the most trending sort of a content that people can pick.
Mhm.
So I think blending that authenticity with aesthetics, that is something people will like. And that's
Yeah.
what I also personally like. But then I'm not someone who says that, if it's not authentic, I'm not gonna watch it. I'm not that cool.
Mhm. Like even many iPhone, like if you're using an iPhone, they usually have this feature now. First time when you buy the phone and then you log on to Instagram or YouTube or anything, there's a
Hmm.
small pop-up notification that comes. I love the app to track your, whatever you search for. So
Hmm.
many people like uh say if they're going through something, of course they're going to go to
mm,
Google and Google it and see what's the solution for this. Now,
mm.
because you click that I love button, it's going to automatically track like what you've been searching and what you've been going through. And
Yeah.
those kind of reels, those kind of shots, those kind of posts are all going to be put across your social media, and people are
Mm,
like, oh wow, the government is watching us. They're listening to whatever we say. But it's just a very simple feature. That's how, like, AI is actually you know evolved throughout the entire years. And I mean, at once upon a time, Instagram did push a lot of aesthetically pleasing content instead of
mm,
authentic content. But I mean, that was the trend at that point of time, right? And now what
mm,
is trending is a lot of authentic content. So
mm,
I say it just goes according to the trends, to be honest.
mm. Who knows? Maybe in future people will find authenticity boring. Who knows?
Could be.
Mm. And now people might get triggered for say for saying such something like this, but we don't know what will
Yeah.
how the trends will change.
Exactly. So, can something, still be authentic, even if it's, carefully curated to, look perfect, or doesn't make it
Mm.
fake?
Um, I think that's the thing I mentioned earlier also, right? The whole thing of
Mhm.
sacrificing authenticity for the aesthetic. I
Yeah.
think that blend of blending authenticity with aesthetics is something people are doing actually. A lot of them, a lot of these influencers
Mhm.
are as of now doing it. Initial stages of the career, they don't do it because they don't have the gig, the tools and the rigs for it. But the
Mhm.
moment they get all the tools, everything that they require to make that sort of great, visual look, aesthetic content, they also, a lot of them do end up, having that sort of a transformation where when it comes to authenticity, like even something like you mentioned earlier, like it might be an authentic content, but in the end, even for that, to make that authentic content, a lot of people end up, it takes a lot of effort as well. A lot of
Yeah.
people, like they don't do it and just they don't just turn on the selfie camera and just do it in one take.
Yeah.
Some of
Yeah.
them do 5, 6, 7 takes. It's quite
Mhm.
interesting. But then also, like, I would for me, aesthetic, like, I don't necessarily would say it's visual. I would,
Mhm.
okay, let's say something funny. If there is an authentic content someone wants to tell, if they are going to tell it to you in a funny sort of an expression, I think that
Mhm.
is also them trying to use some sort of an aesthetic, you know,
Mhm.
to create. In the end of the day, using that sort of an expression, I consider that also one part of an aesthetic. What
Mhm.
is the main quality of an aesthetic is it is eye catching, it is gripping, like it is something that you will look and rewind and watch again and again and again. When
Mhm.
someone tells that thing in a very funny way, it people will rewind and watch it again and again, which is one of the reasons why comedy works very, like, in terms of content creation also, comedy works very well because of that,
Yeah.
because people, when people tell it in a humorous way. So I think that blending that sort of a uh, authenticity with aesthetics,
Mhm.
it's something people are already doing, and
Mhm.
I think I really like that. But then also at the same time, I mentioned earlier, if something that is not authentic, people
Mhm.
end up, with and now that it's coming to a point where people are discouraging that sort of a thing. And
Mhm.
when I mean authentic, it does, like I said, it doesn't have to be necessarily realistic, but that's what is ending up, if you have figured out some way or the other in that aesthetic also how you have been able to connect to an audience. I think that itself is interesting. It may not have to
Mhm.
be authentic. That is something people already are doing. But I think people have blurred the line between authenticity and in social media. Why I'm saying that is because uh, of what authenticity actually means is someone being brutally honest, no filter.
Mhm.
It is just them being themselves.
Mhm.
Now, let's say someone who has like a very, how to say, a very blunt way of talking. If they are
Mhm.
going to filter that and going to talk something on a camera, my
Mhm.
question is, how authentic is that? Are you, because if that's how you talk on social media and someone meets you in real life and you actually don't talk like that, so so that's my one question. Like, if you don't talk like that in real life, how authentic that is? And also when it comes to visual, one assumption people have is for like just people taking their selfie camera and talking and that, because the because it's taking the selfie camera and talking, that it looks a lot more original than
Mm-hmm.
a good camera well shot. So
Yeah.
people immediately will think that is authentic, but authenticity is what the person is trying to say, right? Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
and how original that person is going to be. And that is very difficult. It's easy to say, but in the end, you meet that person in real life, they may not be the exact same person, but it's where, like, when you're on social media and the camera is on, a lot of people will see what you're telling. I think naturally that sort of filter comes in for any person. So you
Mm-hmm.
know so I think that thing of being extremely authentic also, people are doing that, but then also social media blurs that line because you don't meet that
Yeah.
person in real life.
Yeah.
So you don't know necessarily if that person is authentic or not. But the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing of, you asked, can people curate authentic content by making it aesthetic? I think people are already doing that, and people are doing that very well. But then how authentic it is, that is that one question social media will always have, which is very difficult to answer. Which
Mm-hmm.
is and I think okay, no need, AI is a completely different conversation to have about this,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's what I feel.
Like there's also a saying like never meet your heroes in person or never meet your idols in person. Like there's a reason why they do say that, because like take a look. Now you gave a very good example. Now imagine there's a very good influencer, he's doing a lot of good, he talks really well, he behaves in a very good manner, he helps a lot of people, and now suddenly you just happen to be in the same supermarket as him, being in the
Hmm,
same shopping mall as him, or even being the same meetup as him, and you just go and you say hi, and then suddenly he just turns a whole 180, and the good
hmm,
person he or she has been personifying just turns out to the complete opposite. Now how devastated is the person going to be? Like
hmm,
that's the whole thing. Like nowadays I feel like not most, I'd say, like there's a 50-50 chance of them projecting content that is a lot more in a fake reality, like something they wish to
hmm,
be but they're not actually like that in real life. And that actually that creates like a whole another issue, because that fan and you know idol relationship should be there, or that fan and whoever
hmm,
idolize should be there.
hmm,
And that just the line itself is not even there now when you take a look at this. But take a look at, like, some content creators now who are more authentic, who do not have any filters. Now if they say something like, uh take for example, okay, say groceries are very high, or they just go into a shopping mall and they're like, oh yeah, this is too expensive, that is too expensive, you should not buy this kind of product, and you could go for this instead, it might be a
hmm.
lot cheap on the pocket, and it works really well, say for example
Yeah.
something like that. Now
Hmm,
of course they are not going to, they are not sponsored by anything, of course they're not. And even if they are, they might put on a different projection. Now think about something that is cheap and something that is expensive.
but also,
Mhm.
when you were talking about the whole thing of authenticity, right, there is one another flip to this whole conversation we have had, that is introverts. I
Oh yeah.
wanna Yeah,
Yeah.
because this whole thing of where we talk about the whole thing of someone online, they behave some way, and then you meet them
Mhm.
in person the other way. It For introverts, surprisingly, it goes the other way, because introverts are more
Yeah.
honest on social media,
Mhm.
and uh, in for introvert, in a way, for introverts, social media has become a blessing, because in the end of the day, there is one part where, like I said, people will get a little bit anxious because of the because they know people are going to watch
Mhm.
what they're going to say, so indirectly that filter might come for them.
Yeah.
But for an introvert, somehow they're more comfortable just with a camera, because for them it's just them and the camera, and they are
Mhm.
willing to be very honest on social media, put
Mhm.
stories and talk post about that. But you mean, and they might talk like, they have some insane level of guts to talk about things, and you meet them in real life, they are very scared to to approach to people and talk like that. So I think people
Exactly.
might have an assumption and stuff like, how they
Mhm.
are in real life, but it's very interesting that those people on social media, they are so honest. When you meet them in real life, they're so scared to talk about so a lot of things. So I think
Mhm.
in general people just have a weird assumption about introverts, but I think I think people might just have a different assumption about them when they see them in real life. But weirdly, they're
Mhm.
more honest on social media.
Exactly. Now, moving on to the last question. Now, how does this battle between authenticity and aesthetics, affect the way we see ourselves? Even like, how we connect with others online.
I think, like, despite I've spoken this whole pause, I've spoken pretty positive about the whole thing of aesthetics
Hmm.
and authenticity. But then again, we can't deny the fact that in the name of aesthetics, uh, like what is aesthetic is someone is trying to highlight like one part of their day. Let's say
Hmm.
they went to Starbucks and had a coffee, so they will take a picture of that one coffee and put it on their story where
Hmm.
and the person who's traveling in a busy day, they're traveling in their bike or in a bus or something, and they're
Hmm.
seeing that status, and indirectly they are just, and they end up judging their whole life, everything that is going on in their life, and they just immediately start comparing to their how other people's status and what they're
Hmm.
putting out, and we have spoken about that, right? The whole thing of the sort of isolation that social media ends up providing. I think
Yeah.
aesthetics does end up playing a big role in that, because in the name of aesthetics, people end up putting up such stuff, like so like said, they end up sacrificing a lot of authenticity. So in the
Hmm.
end of the day, that one part of the day, that might be very interesting for in their lives, they end up capturing that moment and they put it.
Hmm.
You can't deny that has happened in their lives, but there might be something else that happened on that day that they don't want to share, right? Which
Hmm.
they're not going to share about. And uh, and I think that's the but that person who's seeing the story probably just saw that highlight of their day, and they did not see that one horrible thing that probably happened on that day for that person. They don't know that,
Hmm.
but then they are seeing this one great highlight that's happened. They compare it to their own happening to them. So
Hmm.
I think that's the whole, so the whole social media comparison and all of that stuff that we talk about. I
Hmm.
think aesthetics does end up playing a big role in that, and I think we also end up having a very different perception about how everything is,
Hmm.
and I think that's like a problem. uh, but then in the end, people are also again talking about this whole thing about social media, how things are, and that's where the whole authenticity thing comes, right? Where
Hmm.
we talk about like how people like, for example, a lot of people like this whole behind the scenes. A lot of
Yeah.
people like this
Yeah.
whole a lot of the people like like this photo dump, right? People end up
Hmm.
posting like 10 to 20 stuff in a day, and
Hmm.
you're seeing one person where they're being all aesthetic with their story, and in that photo dump they're being very realistic, and
Yeah.
you end up seeing that one sort of a thing. So that whole thing of aesthetic has somewhat created a mindset that things are going on good for that person and it's not going good for me. That sort of a
Hmm.
mindset does create. I think we're also seeing this new wave of authenticity where things are lot more different. People are being more open and honest about lot more things, how they prefer, like for example, like let's talk about this whole thing of vox pop, right? People keep doing that in
Hmm.
church street all the time. Now there are people who make videos about those people and make jokes how
Yeah.
they're not comfortable about it. They don't like all those stuff that they're talking about. They don't
Hmm.
like one of the things that Bangaloreans crave is how North Indians come to Bangalore and complain about the traffic and everything. And
Hmm.
so I think people, these type of things. Like there is one world where people will be glorifying the city, another
Hmm.
world where people will be talking about the problems in the city. This sort of a mix will forever be there. But I
Hmm.
think but when you see, when people are somewhat curating that sort of an aesthetic look, I think people do end up having that sort of a mindset, and
Hmm.
it does it and it eventually does affect. But we are seeing things getting better now. This whole
Hmm.
thing of people trying to be realistic is coming, a lot of,
Hmm.
and this, I feel like that sort of a content is meant for people who did not like that thing, right? That
Hmm.
aesthetic created sort of a fake world, probably for them.
Hmm.
And this
Hmm.
whole wave of authentic, this whole thing about being authentic is the target audience is for people actually like that,
Hmm.
who don't like that sort of an aesthetic thing.
Hmm.
They prefer this sort of an authentic world. So we are seeing that happen now. And
Hmm.
but my only problem is, in the name of authenticity, everything, there might be content which may not be necessarily authentic,
Hmm.
but it is still very interesting to watch. It might be entertaining to watch, and
Hmm.
people might end up putting the, that content down, and say that this is not interesting and this is not nice. But I
Hmm.
wish people sort of understand that, even it's aesthetic, but it's not, it's not authentic, but it's not necessarily bad as well. It might be
Hmm.
interesting. So I think people should be open minded about that as well.
Hmm.
And I think, but the thing, it's again, is I don't know if it's a trend. I think this whole thing of being authentic is, I think it's going to carry on for years. I don't think it's going to be a trend on social media. It's going
Hmm.
to,
Hmm.
this whole thing of expecting authenticity on social media will be there for a very long time, maybe
Hmm.
forever, who knows.
Hmm. Like at the end of the day, it's like the content, like the content creators create, it's like targeted for a specific target audience. Like for example, like more some people might prefer to see all these colors on the screen, to hear fictional stories and they animate it in certain ways. I mean,
Mm,
some people would prefer that. Some people would prefer the person himself sitting on a chair and just narrating the story,
yeah.
just telling exactly what happened. Now,
Mm,
again, it's targeted to a specific audience. Now,
mm,
imagine an aesthetic person comes to, an authentic video and just sees it. Like, what is that person going to think? He's going to be like, yeah,
yeah.
there's no aesthetics here. There's nothing, vibrant, no color flashing. There's nothing animated here. It's just one dude sitting on a chair, holding a book in
Yeah.
his hand and just, reading it with a nice background in the back. Now, same thing we can say for the authentic person if he just goes to the aesthetic world and just he sees that. Like
Mm,
it's similar to how horror movie watchers just go and watch action movies for the very first time, and they're just blown out. They're like, where are all the scary things? There's nothing there, no suspense. Everything is just fights. This that.
mm,
So
yeah.
that's a very interesting vid. People should actually see. It's actually quite nice the way he explained it, and the way he himself went, and he
Mm.
so he's a horror movie watcher, and he went to the cinema to watch an
Okay, okay,
action
okay,
movie,
okay. Right,
and
right, okay.
yeah, and his whole reactions were like it was very insane. Like he was talking in the movie, but luckily he actually rented the entire thing out. I mean,
Mm,
people with money can obviously do that
mm,
kind of thing, but it was actually
mm,
nice to see, like, his authentic side being shown. Now, this had nothing to do with uh, how everything is, nothing to do with aesthetic, nothing to do with authenticity. He never even made it to look like anything else. He just had a script. He stuck to the script, but somehow, in a way, it fulfilled both aesthetics and it filled authenticity. So
mm.
some people just have that gift to just do it naturally, while other people have to work a lot for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, any closing
But
statements?
no, but yeah, I think that the thing you said, right? Like, even like all these reaction videos, in the end of the day, is one style of authentic videos, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But there are, again, like I said, there is people who like aesthetic stuff, but then there are people who don't like it. And I think it's for
Mhm,
the people who don't like it, this whole thing of authentic content is coming out. And I think it's good
mhm.
to have that sort of a mix. Nothing is wrong in it. But then
Yeah.
people just depending on authenticity, that's one thing. Like I mentioned earlier, right? It's not necessarily something is
Mhm,
authentic, but then it's still something. There's something about it that you have connected to. So I
mhm,
think it's fine. Like, there is one group of people who will go to Paris and post the Eiffel Tower at night and make it look all nice. But then there's
mhm.
this other group of people who go to Paris and show how crowded Eiffel Tower is. And
Yeah, yeah.
you have seen that whole expectation versus reality posts on
Mhm.
Instagram, right?
Yeah.
How a thing is and how actually is. The and there is one group of people who would, I myself would personally love to see a photo of Eiffel Tower at night, which has great sort of view. But then
Mhm,
it is also interesting to see people posting how crowded, it's almost like a park when you say Eiffel Tower. How, when I've seen these
mhm,
videos and posts about how many people, there are like thousands of people actually in Eiffel Tower. And
mhm,
people
mhm,
like, and there are, but then there are people who enjoy seeing that sort of a content more than seeing a great picture of the tower. And
mhm,
there is, one great thing about this whole thing of authentic sort of a content is, it has created, there is content created for people who don't, necessarily like aesthetic stuff. But then I wish people just don't fall into that world completely, because the only reason is people will end up, not being able to love a lot of other content which is not necessarily authentic or original, but it's still an interesting content. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And with that being said, that officially brings us to the end of today's show. A huge thank you to Johan for joining today's show.
Yeah, it was good to be back. Thank you for calling me. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now, remember, guys, we air on Mondays at 4:30 p.m. That's it. If you guys want to contribute our topics, have any questions, or just want to tell us what an amazing job we're doing, you can reach out to us at 6364252164. And a huge thank you to our listeners for tuning in to this edition of the Reality Bang, your weekly dose of youth power, brought to you by FIBA Online.